welcome to another one of our video reviews. As you can see, something a little bit visually gorgeous going on here. It's a new release from Nurse with Wound, Chromanatron. And, as you see, I've got my mitts on the picture disc version. So, we'll drop the needle on this beautiful object and talk music. So, Chromanatron is subtitled A Hallucination on the Music of Sand by Andrew Lyles and Stephen Stapleton. Yeah. What that actually means is Steve Stapleton has been granted access to the complete musical archives of krautrock band Sand. Now, they only did the one album back in the day, but recently has surprised many a krautrock head by opening up their vaults to release 2 new albums of archive material. They must have just been plugging away in there in isolation without listener or audience. It's strange. I mean, their well-known album, Golem, is really one that people didn't know until Messrs. Stapleton and Tibet pushed it to a wider audience. But as you can tell, whilst they may be using Sand tools, it's definitely Nurse with Wound. First thought, of course, is that Nurse with Wound did the remix album for Faust. That's a very different beast. That was a new Faust album that wasn't quite complete, that Nurse with Wound remixed into final form. This really is a Nurse with Wound album utilising Sand sounds. Obviously, a lot of Nurse with Woundish sounds, but when people think of Sand, often the first thing they think of is the catchy song When the May Rain Comes. When I think of Helicopter, it's extraordinary waves of stereo sound. Some of these sounds may be harsher at the moment, but when you actually sit there, the effect is very similar. It's that exploration of stereo, which I know is more Sand's producers than Sand, but it's part of how we experience the music of Sand. Now, so the album is credited simply as Chromanatron Part 1 on this side, Chromanatron Part 2 on the other side. But it's a fast shifting, evolving piece of work. Things happen, don't happen again. It's probably something that could be isolated and separated into different songs, but it just works better as this big flowing beast. It's also fascinating because there's moments where Sand unmistakably are there. It makes you think of those sort of old horror films where the monster or a demon has absorbed people's souls, and suddenly you see it, the victim's faces peering out of the demonic mass. And that is what this album's like. You see Sand's faces poking out of the huge wave of sound sometimes. I mean, when it was first built, it was Sand remixed by Nurse with Wound. I'd perhaps imagined a Sand album with credits to Nurse with Wound, but hearing the results makes total sense that you class this as a Nurse with Wound album. Now let's move further in. I find something completely different every time I pop the needle down. This bit, turn it up a little so you can hear it, but there's quiet moments and loud moments. It does the old Phil Collins in the Air Tonight trick, making you turn up the volume and then slaps you in the face with a wave of volume. So, I feel like there's some of these electronic sounds in here, you know. Obviously it's well known of Steve Stapleton's love for krautrock. And I think this is the closest you get to that modern effect. Those wonderful vintage electronics in there. Harmony across the decades of 1970s sounds, adapted technology of today. It is an extraordinarily bizarre hybrid, this album. I mean, while primarily it's something you'd recommend to Nurse with Wound fans, and I know some of them can be quite grumpy, but this really is amongst some of their finest work. I think it's something that krautrock fans need to hear. If you enjoy the sound collages of the first Faust album, if you like sand, of course, if you love... Here we are, this moment's almost like early Tangerine Dream, given a strange, nightmarish sheen. And now we've got a bit of French horn. To go to the credits, is played by Rick Tomlinson, aka voice of the Seven Thunders. Matt Waldron also gets a credit for atmospheric grooves, and Ian Hinton Smith credited for guitar. He tells me that his guitar bit is a bit towards the end. There's a wonderful shifting of mood all the way on this vehicle. I'm going to call it a vehicle on this record. This very mellow brass led bit gives way to a really rocking bit of motoric psychedelic action. Try and put the needle in the right place. Last time I DJ'd out, I played this end of side one piece, and everyone wanted to know what it was. I mean, you first thought it was, oh well, this is just a sandy bit, but no. I spoke to Ian and he said that that's him playing the kind of drone guitar. There's also I guess this won't come across in the review, but when the guitar gets really loud, there's this gorgeously distorted tone to it, and it phases around just like those classic sand stereo experiments. It also, just the electronic treatment of it all. There's a bit, I'm trying to find it, a bit absolutely kills me. I can't. Oh, that's a bit of it, yeah. It is just one of the best bits of music of the year, that part. I also, you can't separate the music of Nurse of Wound from the art of Bab Santini, and that is just the sort of thing that you want on a picture disc. Obviously other formats are available, but I do love my picture disc. It was in a reputation for bad sound quality, but I've seriously got no complaints with this bad boy. So in Chromanatron Part 2, and I'm leaping all around this like a flea on a tramp's pants, but the whole thing flows beautifully. But I'm sure if you've got any passing knowledge of music, you'll know Stapleton and Lyles. They ain't amateurs when it comes to the studio. This is much extraordinary. Now, somewhere around here, on this side too, get a little quiet, spooky bit, and then you start hearing them singing When the May Rain Comes. And then suddenly, they unleash hell. You hear a bit When the May Rain Comes and you're thinking, oh yeah, we're going to go all psychedelic and trippy, and here we are, look, there's a bit of When the May Rain Comes. I can't skip now. I just love the whole kicking off bit. It's like an electronic scream at the moment, but it gets heavier. Definitely not one I get away with playing around the wife and kids at tea time. Completely apocalyptic. If you're going to get the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse to play you a jazz soundtrack. But then look, here we are afterwards. Beautifully blissful, serene. That's what you want from Nurse with Wounds. You want to have no idea where the next turn will take you. You want something as well that sounds amazingly high-tech, fantastically produced, but not soulless and digital. Something that embraces the analog and the organic. And you get all of that with this. Every time you listen to this record, it surprises and delights you. It takes those wonderful 70s sounds, adds this whole new world and level to them. I've been a massive Nurse with a Wound fan for years, and this is easily on my top 5 favourite Nurse with a Wound albums. Obviously, I've only recently picked it up, so there is the novelty of the new, but I know what I like. I mean, I suppose really a Nurse with a Wound krautrock crossover, it's not really a hard sell to me, is it? It's a no-brainer, but even with those high expectations, I was amazingly chuffed. Now, better do full disclosure. I am actually thanked on the credits. I've had nothing to do with this record. I have not got any hand in it. In fact, probably the opposite. I dragged them away to the pub once when they were working on it. So I've actually delayed the recording process, if anything. But incredibly nice to get a thank you, but doesn't sway my judgment. A fucking great record is a fucking great record, whether you get a thank you or not. And I think doing it here in this video review format proves to you exactly what's going on here with this. This is something majorly special.